Hello and welcome. My name is Sena Azamat, and today's lesson is on the data collection and analysis in MRI. Over the next 22 slides, we will trace how imaging data travels from the scanner all the way to a clinical or research conclusion and why every step along that path matters. Let me start with why this should matter to you as clinicians. New imaging biomarkers are moving out of research papers and into the clinical reports you read every day. AI tools are entering radiology workflows, and you will increasingly be asked to evaluate them critically. Understanding how data is collected and analyzed directly shapes how much you should trust. The core idea I want you to hold on to is this: every step, from scanner to statistic, involves a choice, and those choices affect the conclusion. Here is this our roadmap. We will move through four parts. First, data collection, and it includes the acquisition, sequences, study design, and organization. Second, we will move on preprocessing and quality control. It, it includes artifacts, pipelines, and how we check our work. Third part includes analysis methods, and it constitutes of features, segmentation, statistic, and machine learning. And fourth part is reproducibility and ethics, and it includes standards like bits, the role of the ARB, bias, and generalizability. Before we dive in, here is the whole pipeline on one slide. It begins with acquisition, where the scanner produces raw data. Then reconstruction turns that raw signal, what we call cast space, into images. Preprocessing cleans and aligns those images, analyzes, extracts features, runs statistics, and applies machine learning. And finally, interpretations gives us findings and biomarkers. The key message: each of these steps introduces methodological choices that affect everything downstream. Let's start at the beginning. The scanner doesn't actually produce an image first. It produces cast space, the raw frequency domain signal. This is not yet something you can look at, and the sampling pattern here affects both scans, speed, and signal to noise. Choices at this stage include matrix size, bandwidth, and parallel imaging. We then apply a Fourier transform to move into image space, like DICOM or NIFT images you actually see. Here, each voxel has an intensity, location, and orientation. This is where most analysis begins. Different sequences highlight different things. T1 weighted images gives us anatomy with fat appearing bright. They are structural reference and the basis for volumetry. T2 weighted images make fluid bright and useful for edema, lesions, and CSF. Flare suppress fluid, which makes it excellent for multiple sclerosis lesions and white matter, and diffusion weighted imaging and ABC reflects water diffusion and used in stroke and tumor cellularity. And functional MRI captures blood oxygenation to map functional activation. Many of the most important decisions are made before anyone is scanned. Who is in your cohort? What are the inclusion and exclusion criteria? The demographics. What controls are you using? Healthy comparators matched on age, sex, and scanner, or a longitudinal within subject design? Is your sample size powered to detect the effect you care about, or is this a pilot or a confirmatory study? And is your protocol consistent? The same scanner, the same sequence parameters across all subjects and sites? These choices define what your data can actually answer. In this slide, we will talk about how data should be stored. DICOM is the clinical standard, one file per slice, and with which rich metadata in the headers covering the patient, scanner, and sequence parameters. NIFTY is the research standard, one file per volume and simple header with metadata kept in a companion JSON sidecar. On top of these bits, the brain imaging data structure gives us a standardized folder layout, as you can see in the example here. This standardization is what makes pipelines reusable across different studies and sites. That brings us to our second section, preprocessing and quality control. The central question here is why raw data isn't analyzed as ready. The short answer is that before any analysis can happen, images need cleaning and alignment and careful quality checks. Let's look at what can go wrong. Motion from patient movement cause blurring and ghosting in the fuzz encode direction. The bias field is a smooth intensity variation from coil sensitivity that affects segmentation. Susceptibility artifacts cause distortion near ear tissue interfaces like the sinuses and ear canals. Eddy currents distort diffusion images due to rapid gradient switching. Aliasing or wrap happens when the field of view is too small and anatomy falls into the image. And Gibbs ringing is a truncation artifact producing bright and dark bands at the sharp edges. Most of these are detectable on visual review, and automated tools can help us catch them at scale. Here is a typical preprocessing pipeline. And remember, each step is a research choice with downstream consequences. First, conversion and organization. DICOM to Nifty, organized into bits. Second, motion and distortion correction, realigning volumes and correcting eddy currents and susceptibility. Third, bias fit correction to remove intensity inhomogeneity. NCORE is a common method. Fourth, skull stripping or brain extraction to focus the analysis on brain tissue. And fifth, registration and normalization, aligning everything to common templates such as MNI space so we can compare across subjects. Quality control comes into two flavors: visual checks and quantitative metrics. Visual checks includes coverage, motion, contrast, alignment, and segmentation. In the coverage, is the whole brain in the field of view? Is in the motion part, is there motion, blurring, ghosting, ringing? Does the contrast look as expected for the sequence? Is the registration to the template visually correct? And do segmentation boundaries follow real anatomy? And then there are quantitative metrics. Signal to noise ratio in a tissue region of interest, frame-wise displacement for motion, the coefficient of joint variation for bias field severity, and foreground to background energy ratio. Tools like MRIQC and fMRIPrep generate these reports automatically. Whatever you decide, document your QC decisions and exclusions. They are part of your method. Let me make this concrete with a hippocampal volume measurement on a T1-weighted scan. In the raw data, there is a slight head motion, a bias field making the frontal lobe brighter, blurry gray-white boundary, and segmentation that mistakenly includes neck and skull tissue, all of which biases the volume estimate upward. After pre-processing, the data is motion corrected and resampled, and the bias field is corrected to uniform intensity. The skull is removed with a clean brain boundary, and the hippocampus is segmented against atlas labels. The headline result: the volume estimate changes by about 8%. Pre-processing affects the answer, not just the picture. An image alone isn't a finding. We need to extract measurable quantities to compare across subjects. There are four broad families. These are volumetric features, intensity features, shape and texture features, and functional connectivity features. Volumetric features include region volumes like the hippocampus or ventricles and cortical thickness. Intensity features include mean signal in tissue, T1 and T2 relaxometry, and ADC values. Shape and texture features include surface curvature and radiomic features. And functional or connectivity features include time series, network metrics, and track level functional anisotropy extracted from diffusion tractography. Importantly, the features you choose define what hypotheses you can test. Segmentation is another part of the preprocessing. Segmentation is about deciding which voxels belong to which structure. And there are three areas of methods: manual segmentation, atlas-based segmentation, and deep learning methods. Manual segmentation, where an expert traces structures slice by slice, and is the gold standard, but slow and reader dependent and most accurate when done well, but it takes hours and carries iterative variability. Atlas-based methods register a subject to a label template and transfer the labels back used in FreeSurfer and FSL. They are reproducible and scale to thousands, but struggle with atypical anatomy. And deep learning using CNNs and UNets trained on label data is now state of art for many tasks. Fast and often most accurate, but it needs training data and is vulnerable to domain shift. Once we have numbers, statistics ask whether group differences are real or noise. Group comparison includes, uh, as an example, t-test, ANOVA mixed model, and it helps us to compare patients versus controls on a single region of interest. Voxel-wise analysis using a general linear model fits a model at every voxel and produces statistical maps. This is the basis of functional MRI, voxel-based morphometry, and tract-based spatial statistics. But with 100,000 or more voxels, you will catch thousands of false positives, and you must correct using methods like family-wise error, false discovery rate, or cluster-based approaches. And critically, pre-register your analysis plan because fishing for significance inflates false positives. Nowadays, machine learning are used in MRI assessment more and more. Machine learning is doing a lot in imaging. It can help us to classify disease versus healthy, segmentation of tumors and lesions, prediction of outcomes and treatment response, image enhancement like denoising and super resolution, and even accelerated reconstruction from fever samples. But we need to know the pitfalls. It can be data leakage. Uh, it can suffer from site or scanner bias. It can suffer from small samples, and uh, it, deep learning part is suffering from black box decisions, and we need to validate these findings with external validation. Data leakage means having the same subject in both training and test sets, and it inflates accuracy falsely. Site or scanner bias means the model may learn the scanner rather than the disease. Small samples that look impressive on 50 subjects, but it is rarely generalized. And black box decisions are a real problem in clinical settings, where explainability matters. The bottom line is that external validation is essential before any clinical claim. This slide is a ladder of evidence from weakest to strongest. Within sample performance, training and testing on the same data carries a high risk of overfitting. Cross-validation using k-fold splits is better, but still relies on a single source. A held-out test sets split before any modeling and tested only once at the end is stronger still. And the strongest evidence comes from external cohort, an independent dataset from a different site, scanner, and population. That is where you demonstrate true generalization. A finding you can't reproduce isn't really a finding. Here are 6 practical steps. Use standard formats like bits for organization, NIFT for images, so pipelines just work. Use containers like Dockers. Use version control, Git for code, data lab for large data. Lean and open community-weighted pipelines like fMRIPrep, QAPrep, dMRIPrep. Use open datasets such as Openneuro, ADNI, UK Biobank, and HCP as a common benchmarks. And pre-register your hypothesis and analysis plan before you look at the data. Finally, the ethical dimension. Consent and IRB approval mean subjects must understand what data is collected and how it is stored and who can access it and how long it is retained. The identification, the facing structural scans, removing DICOM fields matters because the identification risk is non-trivial. Sampling bias is a serious concern. If your training cohort is mostly one demographic, your result may not transfer. So document who is included and who is missing. And remember, performance in a paper does not equal safety in deployment. Calibration, drift, ongoing monitoring all matter for clinical translation. Review with 5 takeaways. First, every step from scanner to statistic involves choices, and those choices shape the conclusion. Second, standardized acquisition, its organization, or shared pipelines make work comparable. Third, preprocessing isn't optional cleanup. It's part of the method and it changes the answer. Fourth, reproducibility is built in advance through code, containers, pre-registration, and external validation. And fifth, whenever you read an imaging paper or evaluate an AI tool, ask 3 questions. Who was scanned, on what, and how was it validated? Thank you for your attention. I would like to acknowledge the RD School, part of the neurotechnological solution platform against challenges threatening human functions under the TÜBİTAK 1004 Center of Excellence Support Program. I am happy to take any questions.